And these are not great numbers that we're looking at. I mean, global merger and acquisition activity falling by 31%, but in the same breath, we'd actually seen quite a large uptick. So do you think that this is more of a stable scenario that we're looking at?
Well, thanks very much for having me, Eleni, and good afternoon to all the viewers. In fact, it's not all doom and gloom. The bells aren't really tolling for us yet. We had, in 2009, obviously a big fall-off in terms of deal activity, only about $14 billion in Africa. But since then, we've seen a bit of an uptick, $40 billion in 2010, $26.8 billion in 2011. So even though there's a bit of a downward trend in 2011, the numbers have been up since 2009 when we saw that those big global jitters.
Yeah. Asia-Pacific deals, this is what's interesting when we see the lowest level since the third quarter of 2009. Is this a worrying number? I mean, clearly that we've actually reverted back to 2009 levels.
Well, there has been some stagnation in global M&A activity, and obviously there's always a good barometer of the global economy as a whole. But in terms of Africa, there's a lot to be not to be gloomy about. There's definitely some hope. We've got a lot of good M&A drivers in the continent. These include the likes of cross-border deals. A lot of companies are looking for that blue sky potential in emerging markets, which they're not finding elsewhere. So, in terms of Africa, there's certainly a lot to be grateful for at the moment, I think.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're saying that we could actually see more activity coming through on the African continent. Of course, you mentioned emerging markets as a whole, but would you say that Africa would be a big focal point?
Well, yeah. It's almost to be seen like Africa is certainly one of the sort of last frontiers in terms of exposure to blue sky emerging markets. Just anecdotally, in the last couple of days, we've had Tiger Brands say they're in talks with Dangote for a stake in Dangote flour, and we've recently had Puma Energy, as the company, a Swiss-based company, says they're going to take a majority stake in Kenyan-listed Kenol Cobalt. Earlier this year, we had Exoro saying that they did a deal whereby they acquired ASX-listed African Iron for $321 million. So just anecdotally, there's certainly been lots going on, and we've been certainly keeping busy in terms of covering all deals. So, and we haven't been idle. So, there's lots to be grateful for.
Peter, also looking at private equity buyouts, they account for around 10%, over 10% of global merger and acquisition activity. Would you say that this number could actually possibly increase down the line?
Private equities obviously, taken a bit of a knock in the past. The cost of debt has, the liquidity crisis, the cost of debt has increased a bit. But I see that. I see that number possibly increasing. A lot of private equity cycles are sort of coming to an end, and we could certainly see some action on that front. It's been a bit quieter in the past, but I expect that number could tick up a bit.